Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki. Welcome to the 530th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 152nd YouTube program hosted by our wonderful Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thank you for joining us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, or C-SAAHN, as I like to pronounce the acronym, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now, before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted and your video turned off. If you have a question or a comment, please type it into the chat box and we'll go through them at the end of the presentation. We are recording this program, so you can watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and their YouTube channel as well. And we certainly hope you share the link with others. Now, on to our featured speaker, and it's going to be Henry Swiatek of Swiatek Studios. He's the retired owner, and he's second generation, has his son Brett, who couldn't join us today. So, Henry, I'm going to take it away from you. You're going to give a little background on the studio and its history. And let's see, this is part two, folks. We did part one in February. This is about local churches, and in this case, built by local architects. Okay, take it away, Henry.
Yes, good afternoon. And I thank the program for inviting us to do this presentation. It's a subject very close to my heart. I am second generation church restorer, well, actually architectural restorer, but when I was in business with my dad, who founded the business, Henry Swiatek Sr., I'm second generation, and my children, Brett Swiatek and Stacy Udavi, and my grandson, Corey Barsakowski, who is now fourth generation of the Swiatek family, continuing our contributions in Western New York and out of state. The subject of today's program is a continuation in the appreciation, I guess, of two Buffalo-born architects, Chester Oakley and Albert Schaumo, and who I have to say are incredibly overshadowed, I'm going to put it that way, by the prominence of Buffalo architecture with the H.H. Richardson complex, the Frank Lloyd Wright presence, and of course the Lewis Sullivan Guarantee Building. But when you're watching this program, please be in mind in the history and the time period that the building of these churches that you're about to see took place. So it would have been 20 years after the Pan American Exposition, and a time in Buffalo when we had all the heavy hitters from the entire country, people like Louis Comfort Tiffany, John LaFarge, Rhodey Rombush, and people of that stature coming to Buffalo to contribute to our rich art and architectural history. So that being said, we'll just show a little bit of who we are. And we've always been mostly a family business, but since I retired, the studio has greatly expanded to the time now where we have 12 full-time employees in areas of stained glass and art restoration. These are the areas in the country which we've been fortunate enough to work in. And the beauty of the experience is that every part of the country that you go to, you learn, and you learn more things. So it's been an evolution of our studio to where we are today.
Okay.
This is a list of what our studio offers. And I'm just going to repeat a picture from our first program. This is the front facade of St. Casimir Roman Catholic Church in the Kaisertown section of Buffalo. It's on a side street and unfortunately is under-recognized partially for that reason. But just generally speaking is that we have these wonderful, beautiful pieces of art that were created by not only Oakley and Shalmo, but other contributors within the city of Buffalo that are, as I mentioned earlier, are often overshadowed by some of the more prominent architects. This is just a second picture of St. Casimir. And if you could look at and draw your attention to the tile roofs. Oakley was known specifically to work in the Byzantine style, which is characteristic by the rounded domes that you see in this picture. And the tile roofs are actually a mosaic of terracotta tile created in a pattern to enhance their appearance. Here we have a picture of Chester Oakley. Buffalo born, was born on Pine Avenue, right off of Broadway, not from the downtown area. And as a young man, was encouraged by his mother to walk to the public library and borrow books on architecture and art, and became a proficient draftsman even as a teenager. And it is a sort of a mystery because of the fact that Oakley's formal education only went to the 9th grade. And somehow, I guess under the conditions at the turn of the century, it was not, you were not obligated apparently to have higher degrees to get a job as a draftsman. So he became initially a draftsman for Lansing Architects here in Buffalo, and later was able to form a partnership with Albert Shalmo. And I'm assuming Shalmo did have a degree as a structural engineer, and that enabled Mr. Oakley to continue his design work. The first church we're going to look at was the former St. Luke's Roman Catholic Church here in Buffalo, which at one point was closed by the diocese. Two people, Amy Betros and Norm Painolini, who have since passed away. Norm Painolini has passed away. Amy Betros still is the director of the Mission to Mercy, saved the church and the ministry, and now continues to help in probably one of the roughest neighborhoods in the city. But they are incrementally improving it with the help of donors like Russ Salvatore, of providing housing and food and sustenance and medication to the poor in that particular neighborhood. Also significantly opened recently a home for abused, I hate using that word, but abused women that have free housing now on the campus. Now, just to look at the outside, generally speaking, the church was designed on the premise of St. Paul's outside the walls of Rome. And when we look to the inside, you'll see the resemblance. The bell tower or campanile would have been something very easily recognized from the Italian style. Here's a picture of the interior, and later in the presentation, you'll see this is the areas that we've already restored. And St. Paul's outside the walls of Rome, St. Mary Major in Rome, are famous for this coffered ceiling style where you would have step moldings. And if I'm not mistaken, there's probably from the inside blue down to where the mural is, somewhere in the vicinity of 15 individual plaster castings that were installed there. I don't know of many buildings in Buffalo that could brag outside Buffalo Performing Arts that could say that they could parallel the amount of work that we're looking at. To the right in the picture, as I'm looking at it, I'm not sure how it's appearing on your screen, is the original, I shouldn't say original, a color scheme that was installed sometime in the 1950s with the pastel colors. To the left, as in the previous picture, and in the area to the left, you'll see the areas that have that are now in the process of being restored more consistently with the original Oakley design and color palette. Now we come to what, in my estimation, is a representation of the most significant religious art in Western New York, and maybe even in this part of the country. The figure of God the Father above the altar was executed by an artist by the name of John Henry DeRozan. The reason that's important is that there's two artists that are represented in the Papal Chapel at Castel Gandolfo. The first artist is Michelangelo, and the second artist is John Henry DeRozan, whose work you're looking at. John Henry DeRozan was asked to commission two paintings for the Papal Chapel by Pope Pius XI, Achille Rate. And there's an entire story to that you could probably find on the DeRozan website if he was still interested in more biographical information on DeRozan. But just real briefly, to give you an idea of his credentials, his father was the last of the court iconographers for the Romanov family at the time of the Russian Revolution in 1917. They fled to Paris, where DeRozan studied at the Sorbonne, and moved on from there, fought in World War I, obtained the French Legion of Honor award after the war, fighting on the side of the French for the liberation of Poland. He came to Buffalo in 1951 while he was the residing art professor at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. And we are just so blessed that we have his work. This is a clear indication, I guess, if you would, of the architectural style with the Corinthian capitals, the rounded arches, for which Romanesque architecture is most noted for. Here we come to the absolute specialty, and which I believe separates Chester Oakley from almost any other church architecture in Buffalo, including all of them. These are executed in terracotta, which were designed by Oakley and then sent engineered and architectural drawing to a kiln in Crumlin, Pennsylvania. where the artisans there would then take the drawing, the scale drawings, and create models for the castings of in the terracotta, at which time they would be molded, fired, and then colored and fired again, glazed, and then fired again. They really, what we're looking at is a mosaic in tile, if you would, that all the pieces that you're looking at, you'll see the joinery and the fact that it's not one continuous piece, but individual castings. I'm glad we came back to this. This is a half of the original mural known as the Annunciation. On the right side of this mural is the Angel Gabriel, but here we have the Blessed Mother. And these colors that you're looking at have not been touched since 1951. And the reason that they're so vivid is that the technique that was used was raw pigment developed into a tempera medium and then applied. I mentioned the fact that de Rosen's father was an iconographer. And what's specific to iconography, Eastern iconography, is the fact that the entire background is first gold leafed to indicate the kingdom of God. And that's what the gold represents, shining through the representation that you're looking at. But the colors and the quality of drawing are amazing. Here we see a much better focus on the complete artwork. And when we started the recreation of the Oakley palette at St. Luke's, it was the idea of using the same jewel tones that we see in the original de Rosen paintings. The stained glass, because of the fact that it was done in that particular period, the stained glass windows in St. Luke's, and the reason we're showing it, are kind of unique. They were put together in sand castings, and it's known as chunk glass, which would have been one of the first styles of designing what we refer to as stained glass windows. The next church that we're going to come to, I believe, is the greatest work or opus of Chester Oakley. And if you haven't seen it, I would make every effort to go and see it in person, because as beautiful and interesting as it may look, it really doesn't do justice until you've seen it in person. Here's the front entrance, which in the symbolism that's above the front entrance is the entire symbolism of the Our Father. And we won't have to look at each individual one because of the fact that Oakley hand designed over 2,000, that's 2,000 individual religious symbols that went into the decoration of both of the inside and outside. And I have to say that the beauty of the Oakley churches, if it hasn't been mentioned, is that you can appreciate and enjoy them as works of art from the outside and the interior. I'm going to draw your attention to the left, to the column to the left of the two angels. The church was designed in a style referred to as Lombardian Romanesque, or the Lombardy province of Italy. And the bricks that were used to build the outside of the church were actually hand formed and hand kilned on site. And I'll draw to your attention to the middle, not the outside or the inside corners, but the middle bricks. You could see how they're all odd shaped. And the amount of skill that it would take a bricklayer or a modern day mason to be able to execute a wall using all these incredible odd shapes, but yet coming up with a true outside, a 90-degree outside corner. The amount of skill that went into just simply that should be appreciated. Here we have another example of, well, a few things. I'd like to draw your attention to the masonry work. Anybody who has ever worked in any form of construction will tell you it's hard enough to make things straight and plumb, but to be able to create these incredible arches and the elliptical shapes that we see is like masonry to the second, third, or fourth power. There's just incredible amount of skill that would be required to even do just one of these entrances, but the entire church is decorated in this fashion.
I'm gonna just skip.
We're just clicking back. A couple of things that I'd like to draw your attention to is look at these fluted columns and how no two of them are the same. Okay, I will say that the medieval masons and artisans, the reason why we see decoration at so many of the junctures is because to the medieval and Renaissance artists, to have two intersecting lines in a building or architecture was too harsh on the eye. So they would have created a floral or a design piece to steer the eye to the art and not to the fact that another architectural element was ending and another one was starting. One of the universal themes that you'll find in Oakley's work are these incredible casted angels. And I really appreciate these from being involved in so many church decoration projects, is the fact of his sense of color. He went through great strides to create banquets for the eye. Well, now we'll get to the interior, and if you haven't really appreciated it, and I guess we're running out of time, so we're going to have to go a little quicker. But this is an example of the beautiful work you'll find in the church. This piece of art was designed by the Professor Vincent Mondo from New Haven, Connecticut, who was commissioned to do the interior decoration. This beautiful angel, again, is a common theme that you'll find, the angelic appearance of the interior of the churches. The incredible rose window and the entire rank of organ pipes. And another feature I'll draw your attention to is this skylight. Was executed by the Froe Art Glass Studio, which was a Buffalo company, and operated their studio here in Buffalo, but worked in all parts of the country. There's 20,000 individual pieces of glass that comprise that composition that you're looking at. Here, the other artist represented at Blessed Trinity is a Buffalo-born artist whose work I'm sure you've seen in many churches, but maybe didn't know him. His name was Joseph Mazer, and he was a prodigy. Had his own individual show at the Albert Knox Art Gallery when he graduated from high school, and went on to do many interior church decorations. This is a representation of Jacob's ladder from Scripture. We're going to add and be able for people to see some of the other design work that Oakley was known for. This is St. Bonaventure University, Devereux Hall. This is Freedsome Library, and to the entrance to the library, you'll see an immediate connection to the Oakley style. This is known as St. Joseph's Oratory, which is in the very middle of the campus. I should, and it would be devoid of me not to mention that the dean of St. Bonaventure at the time of Oakley being active was a Father Plassman. And Father Plassman was known as one of the top 3 theologians in the country. And much of the religious education that Oakley absorbed was at the elbow of Father Plassman.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. Stop sharing.
Well, a banquet for the eye, Henry, was a most appropriate way to describe this whole program. Thank you for capturing it as you did. Are these churches, it wasn't clear to me, are they vibrant in a way that there's a community supporting them? Are they just hanging on? Are they closed in some cases? What's the status of each?
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, Dennis, is because they're all in jeopardy and they all need help. These tremendous, tremendous works of art and architecture, which will never, ever be replicated. St. Casimir, Blessed Trinity are struggling. And recently, St. Casimir had a town hall meeting to keep their doors open. With the recent closings here in the diocese over this terrible thing that's going on, has caused the diocese to try to look for places that perhaps aren't doing that well. And St. Luke's is healthy only because of the fact of the ministry that they have there with the soup kitchen, the distribution of baskets, food baskets.
Oops. We seem to have Henry frozen like that. I don't know if you can hear us. Oh, that's too bad.
It's very like $25, $50 contributions that they get in the mail, and that's how they're sustaining themselves.
Thank you. Henry, you froze there for about 20 seconds. Can you just repeat that last part? We picked you up with the $25.
Oh, okay.
Last sentence.
Okay, just that St. Luke's doesn't receive any public funds and are sustained by very small contributions, some of them in the amount of $25, $30, $50 contributions that people help them sustain their ministry.
Suggestions. What do you have as a way? I think our ancestors built these incredible structures. Our generation's task is only to keep them from falling down if they're not being used properly or closed. What suggestions do you have, just for us to think about, even as a community, if we to appreciate them and then want to preserve them, even if we can't figure out what to do, perhaps next generations will. How do we do that?
Well, when I am asked to speak to the parishes at different times, like right at this very moment, we're fighting to keep St. Casimir open. And I use this example, Dennis. If your grandfather said to you, you know what, I'm going to build you the best house that I can build. I'm going to build it with the best material. It's going to have the best design, and I'm going to pay for it. I'll build it, and I'm going to give it to you. All you have to do is keep it and maintain it. That's all they asked us to do, Dennis. They did all of the hard stuff. And I often use the example of my maternal grandmother, Stefania Kadash, who was one of the first parishioners of Corpus Christi Church here in Buffalo. My father told me at one time that my grandmother donated her entire year's salary to the building of Corpus Christi that she could pay over an increment of 10 years. Why I bring that up is that's where the level of commitment has changed from today. Is that today we're almost, well, we're going to give what we have left. Those people gave, just like the widow from scripture, that they gave of their very essence. There's an example of a German Catholic church, St. Michael's in Rochester, and I read in their history that people actually mortgaged their homes and took that money to build, and it was all out of appreciation, and they wanted to recreate the same beauty, the same religious vibrancy that they experienced in Europe, wherever they came from, and they wanted to recreate it here. And out of gratitude to the divine, that Monsignor Schwenger at St. Louis Church downtown once explained to me. He said, Henry, they used the best materials, they used the best design, and they built them to last, not to be ostentatious, but the result was. So what the intention was not to be showy or look what we have, but the idea was they were giving the best of what they had. And in today's culture, we've lost that, unfortunately. We're building casinos instead.
Well, it's a reality. One last question along that line, and then we can see if our audience has some as well. And I want to go over on this. I think it's important.
Okay.
Is the diocese created any fund separating the buildings and the treasure that the artwork and architecture is to focus on that component for preservation for future generations, aside from all the dailiness of trying to stay afloat, if you will?
Well, fortunately, Blessed Trinity should be a model for that, quite honestly, because when Father Kern was there, and he wrote a biography of the parish, which I would encourage people to check their Sunday schedule, and they have an entire history of Blessed Trinity available. Well, I mean, we just scratched the surface, quite honestly, in 20 minutes. But they were able to obtain a New York State landmark status, and they also have local landmark status, and they also have landmark status from the Western New York Landmark Society, which is now Preservation Niagara, if I'm not mistaken. Well, why is that important? That entitled them. That entitled them to apply for preservation funds, and recently they did receive a grant from the New York State Conservancy, Parks, and whatever that title is. And so they were able to fix their roof, and they were able to maintain the buildings because of that. But in order to get those grants, you have to have what they have, determination of eligibility, which we're trying to achieve for St. Casimir's. And it's a very long process, unfortunately, and but we're still going to try very diligently. But To answer the question of the diocese, no, each individual parish is responsible for their own sustenance. Unfortunately, well, we don't have to go down that road of what the diocese is facing right now. But in any event, so they're no longer in the position to help sustain these struggling parishes.
All right,
So,
but along those lines, do the individual parishes own their building, or does the diocese own the building?
no, and that's an important distinction. Thanks for bringing that up. Is that like individual religious orders, like the Vincentians in Niagara University, the Franciscans in Olean, the Jesuits at Canisius, individual orders, they own those properties. But diocesan parishes come under the authority of the bishop. And I don't know the exact legal title, but he is actually the president, if we want to draw that example, like president of a corporation. And that corporation owns all the diocesan parishes. There are a few separate examples, like Corpus Christi Church in Buffalo on Clark Street is owned individually by the Pauline Fathers. They own the church and the buildings and the property that they stand on, only because the church, when it was founded by the Franciscan conventuals, it was set up that way by Father Hyacinth Fujinski. And for the longest time, actually, St. Louis Church on Main Street was also independently owned. But that since has changed also.
Hey, we better get some questions here.
Okay.
Allison, any comments, questions? Or Melissa?
I'll actually take it, Dennis. There's been a few comments, so I'm just going to read them very quickly. One, this is clearly a labor of love for you. Thank you for showing us so many wonderful details of Buffalo's hidden treasures, and thank you for your role in preserving them. So that was one. Another comment, excellent presentation. I applaud your 4 generations of dedication and passion to these beautiful churches. And then another comment says that tours of Blessed Trinity can be arranged according to their website. So in case that's of use to anyone. The one question we have gotten so far is, could you share the addresses of some of these cathedrals or churches?
We'd have to look them up. I could tell you the streets that they're on. I can't say their individual numbers. Oh, some of them I have. I believe St. Casimir's is 196 Cable Street, Buffalo. C-A-B-L-E, Cable.
This is
St. Luke's
325 Walden Ave
for St. Luke's.
in Buffalo. And then
And it looks like Deborah just put Blessed Trinity in the chat. It's well, I'll add it. 317 Leroy Avenue, Buffalo.
Right, that's correct,
And
yes.
that is Blessed Trinity.
Wonderful.
should we get them all then?
I can't say enough about the Blessed Trinity, quite honestly. I could go on for an hour just on Blessed Trinity, because it's an absolute marvel. And you can appreciate someone in my profession. I often will use the example of a baseball player who gets an opportunity to play in the World Series. Okay, that it's very few people, get to be able to work on something like that. So please, please, please go and see these churches. They're just incredible.
Henry, what I'm going to do is, if you're open to it, put out your email contact information. If any in the audience, or hopefully this gets seen by others in the archive position, want to pivot from you with thoughts, suggestions, what to do next. Can we do that? Does that make sense to do?
Yes, yeah, you can do that and it'll go directly. I'll be able to see it, Brett will, and we can answer questions as I read them.
And what, say your contact info.
Oh,
What-
it's pretty simple. So the company name is Swiatek Studios. It's just swiatekstudios@gmail.com. And you
Perfect.
can also find it on our website at www.swiatekstudios.com. And there'll be a button right on the home screen that you can click and it'll email right to us. Mhm.
Yeah, and you might put, eventually you'll have a link for this program. You might put that on your website as well. The last two
Absolutely.
programs. How's that? for
Absolutely, yeah.
A good way to do it. Well, this is really, certainly met my expectations and beyond. And it's a wonderful tour. If we were going to Rome or anyplace else, we'd say, wow, what an incredible site. And here they are right under, right in our sight lines without going very far. All we have to do is appreciate them. And I hope in some ways these two programs have helped us create an unawareness of the treasures in our own backyard.
And we thank you for that, Dennis.
You're quite
Thank
welcome. Thank you for organizing
And
this
thank you, Michael.
as well and running this, Marissa, that you helped. Great firm. Keep up the good work, and maybe we can continue this conversation somehow.
Hopefully, yeah.
You're open to it, certainly, to how do
Oh,
we
yeah.
do this? How do we protect these treasures? And we'll just, that is an open-ended question. How's that?
Correct.
Yeah, great, good. To be continued, I like to say. All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us today. Next week, we're going to continue our Imagine programs. And we're going to look at, well, sustainability at a level. And hope you join us on Zoom, Bill Nowak and Majadi Baruti on renewable heat and New York's climate goals. I know Majuda is on Push Buffalo, and Bill Nowak is a guy that's been involved in this area of concerns and sustainability all his working career. I know as a fact. So it'll be most interesting. Please make sure you join us. And thank you for doing so and supporting this program by watching each week and telling others to do so as well. I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and good day.
Okay, you made it.